Simulation theory. It starts with the premise that if civilization and computing power progress on an endless scale, at some point we could develop simulations so enormously complex and realistic that any conscious observer encoded inside would be unable to distinguish it from an organic physical reality. Even if we were in a simulation, we wouldn't be able to know. If beings could create a system so advanced that they could create entire physical laws governing the universe to the biological complexities of life itself, they would have taken steps to ensure that whatever you do would have been predicted before you even thought about it. We might not live in a real universe, but rather a close approximation of one. The bus you took today and the coffee you drank aren't all really there, but just perfect models of one. Think of it this way. How sure are you that the red you see is similar to the red you see? We could be one universe out of thousands in an alien lab to find out what would happen if humans had nuclear bombs, or what would happen if you didn't ask her out. Creationism. Creationism is the belief that the universe and all life within it are created by a supernatural being or divine entity often identified as God in Abrahamic religions like Christianity, Judaism, and Islam. According to this view, humans and all living things did not arise through natural processes like evolution, but were created by this divine creator. The birds, the trees, and the world were just willed into existence by this greater being. One of the most well-known creationist accounts comes from the book of Genesis in the Bible, which describes God creating the heavens, the earth, and all plants and animal life in 6 days, with the final creation being that of the first human beings, Adam and Eve, on the 6th day. Many young Earth creationists interpret this literally, believing that the Earth and its life forms were created just a few thousand years ago. But other old Earth creationists think it's more of a symbolic story of how the world came about, with one day equating to any given number of years. Evolution. With this, it comes down to survival of the fittest. This scientific theory claims that all living organisms have gradually changed and developed through natural selection over an extremely long period. Humans did not suddenly appear in their present form, but evolved over millions of years from early primates to what we are now. An important rule you remember is that species better adapted to their environments tend to survive and reproduce, passing on beneficial traits to successive generations through genetic inheritance. To picture it, let us use Darwin's finches on the Galapagos Islands, where different beak shapes allowed finches to take advantage of diverse food sources on the various islands. Although the finches were all the same species, Darwin noticed something interesting. The finches on each island had different beak shapes than finches on other islands. He concluded that hundreds of years ago, the Galapagos Islands were all probably one continuous island with basically the same beak. Now, due to climate change, the sea levels rose and began separating them into many islands. Individuals had mutations with the original set of birds, such as slightly shorter and thicker beaks or longer, slender beaks. The same could be applied to almost every animal on Earth as they evolved to fit that environment. Well, except Australia. Intelligent design. It is more of a philosophical perspective that argues certain features of the universe and living things are best explained by an intelligent cause or designer rather than an undirected, naturalistic process like evolution. As our ancestors often looked at specific aspects of our world, they wondered how this could have happened by chance. Life's systems work together so well they seem more complex than anything humans have made, suggesting to some that this couldn't have happened by chance. The sun's rising, the hexagonal honeycombs that make beehives so accurate, the math that makes inventions happen. It was all too specific. Some believe that evolution can't fully explain how unlikely it is for life to have started by chance. They pointed to aspects of biology that had something called irreducible complexity, meaning that in big systems, removing a single part would cause the entire thing to fail and lose its function. Remove the queen from the beehive and the colony collapses overnight. Panspermia. The theory holds that billions of years ago, before there was any life on Earth, the universe was already teeming with simple microbial organisms. These hardy single-celled life forms managed to survive in the vast hostile reaches of interstellar space where temperatures were sub-zero. Then, one fateful day, a rogue asteroid or comet streaked through a distant cosmic dust cloud, gathering some of these microscopic alien particles and encasing them in a protective crystalline shell. This rock would travel travel for millions of miles and millions of years. Eventually, this tiny arc of extraterrestrial seeds found itself on a collision course with a nondescript planet orbiting a yellow star. As the comet blazed through the atmosphere, the intense heat and friction cracked open its crystal vault, raining down the first life forms onto the sterile, lifeless surface. The microbes almost instantly went to work metabolizing and replicating in their new terrestrial home. Through billions of years of evolution, their descendants diversified into all the plants, fungi, and animals we see around us today, including human beings. Of course, as intriguing as Panspermia is, it kicks the ultimate origin question a little further down the road. If life started elsewhere, where did those original alien microbes come from? Multiregional Hypothesis. Though an outdated theory, it thinks that hundreds of thousands of years ago, our ancient human-like ancestors began migrating outward from Africa where they had evolved. They didn't remain isolated populations as they gradually expanded into new territories across Eurasia and beyond. Instead, there was a continuous genetic exchange and inbreeding occurring between the populations of migrating humans as they commingled with more ancient human varieties they encountered along the way, such as the Neanderthals. Under this theory, the emergence of anatomically modern Homo sapiens wasn't the result of a lineage evolving in one particular region before rapidly replacing all other archaic human species across the old world or driving them into extinction. Instead, our modern human origins arose as a gradual evolutionary merging of different ancient human varieties contributing genetic material to the shared ancestor pool. So, rather than having a single modern human genesis point, our species began taking precise shape in a slow, shifting mixing zone spanning hundreds of years across Africa, Europe, and Asia. Biogenesis. Before the 19th century, and before anyone understood where life came from or how it arose, there was a raging debate between two competing schools of thought, vitalism and biogenesis. The vitalists believed that living organisms could spontaneously generate itself from inert, non-living matter through some kind of supernatural vital force or mystical life essence. They pointed to examples like maggots seemingly appearing from rotting meat, or mice materializing among piles of old rags as proof of life spawning from the lifeless. But then there were the biogenists, who made a claim that life can only come from life. They argued that those rotting meat piles and old rags didn't create life from anything, but merely provided fertile breeding grounds for already existing microscopic life forms to thrive undisturbed. The biogenists' radical idea was that every living organism, no matter how seemingly insignificant or primitive, descended from a long, unbroken lineage of ancestors stretching back to the earliest stirrings of life on Earth. Life begets life is an uninterrupted chain. A key moment in the 1660s when an Italian scientist named Francesco Redi performed a famous experiment. He let rotting meat putrefy in two jars, one open to the air and one sealed shut. Maggots appeared in the open jar from eggs laid by flies, but the sealed jar remained free of spontaneous maggot generation. Over the next 2 centuries, mounting evidence from improved microscopes and experiments gradually shifted scientific consensus away from vitalism in favor of biogenesis and the belief in life's unbroken continuity. Of course, biogenesis still needs to solve the ultimate mystery of how the first life arose from inorganic matter, but it would mean that your existence now results from a long, unbroken chain of events lasting billions of years. RNA World Hypothesis. Before DNA and proteins were the main acts on Earth, there may have been a much simpler form of life via RNA. In this early intro to biological complexity, simple RNA strands are thought to have self-replicated and even facilitated their evolution through random mutations and selective replication of the fittest RNA varieties. Think of it as molecular Darwinism before evolution had even the chance to begin. It was an RNA world, a prebiotic stage of lifelike chemical evolution before DNA's more elegant double helix assumed the roles of life's instruction manual. It was a time when RNA could do it all as both the blueprint and builder. But this RNA world couldn't have lasted forever. Those primordial RNA strands faced major challenges like limited chemical versatility and an inability to copy lengthy sequences accurately over many generations without making too many errors. It was the molecule equivalent of a maxed out basic computer mode eagerly awaiting a systems upgrade to unlock its full potential. That's precisely what happened through the gradual evolution evolution of DNA and proteins. Hydrothermal vent hypothesis. If the calendar of the universe were to be compressed into a single year, with the Big Bang kicking things off at midnight on January 1st, our entire recorded human history from the first civilizations to today amounts to no more than the final few seconds of strain before that arbitrary yearly cycle resets. Rewind the timeline from roughly 4 billion years ago to late August in this calendar, and the Earth had just finished cooling enough for stable continental land masses to appear. But the planet's early surface could not hold life, as it was constantly bombarded by asteroid impacts and volcanic eruptions that released toxic gases into an oxygen-free atmosphere. It was hardly an ideal real estate opportunity for budding biology to stake its claim, except perhaps in one marine environment, the hydrothermal vents. Deep beneath the ocean's immense pressures, the chimney-like vents blasted superheated mineral-rich fluids from the roasting rock below. In this constant merging of elemental chemicals, some believe that random collisions of inorganic compounds produced the first organic life. The supposed sequence goes like this. When volcanoes erupt underwater, basic chemicals like methane gather around underwater vents. These vents, full of energy and minerals like iron and nickel, could have helped start life. Over millions of years, these collections of reactive molecules slowly merged into building blocks for more complex polymer strands capable of primitive storage and transfer of coded information. Molecular variants that catalyzed their replication eventually outcompeted less aggressive varieties in these mineral womb environments. These early self-replicating organisms spread out, populating wider marine ecosystems, and through evolutionary processes, gave rise to more complex life forms that eventually led to humans. Organisms like the heat-loving archaea microbes lurking around modern hydrothermal vents may be what that first life looked like eons ago.